Good morning, good afternoon, folks. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today for this webinar. My name is Sadat Malik. I'm the Vice President and General Manager of Edge Computing at VMware. So I have been in the Edge area for a very long time. This is my second decade working in this space, been almost 20 years. When I started off in this area many years back, there was still a lot of hype, and this was considered a very novel area for people to be investigating. Over time, that hype has translated into a lot of value for customers. People have figured out how to take advantage of the intelligence that is now growing at the edge and taking it and building business outcomes of it. So from the time I've started off in this area, there are lots of lessons that I've learned. There are lots of war stories that I can share with you. So today in this session, I'm going to talk a little bit about what my view on the future of Edge is. This is based on my own experiences, stories that I've been part of, stories that I've heard from my customers, and the vision that a lot of us now share in terms of where IT is going, where OT is going, and the role that Edge is going to play in that. So without taking any further time, let's get started, and I'll share with you what my view is and some tips and tricks on how to make the best of what's about to come. The agenda for today's talk, we've divided it up into 4 areas. I'll start off with an overview of what the future of Edge holds. Then I will get into a little bit of a discussion about the challenges in that future. That future is not without its roadblocks and issues that have to be overcome for people to be able to extract the most value. And then I'll come to the meat of the webinar today. I'll discuss the tips and tricks, some of the lessons I've learned, some of the war stories that I have to share with you in terms of how do you go and embrace this opportunity in a manner which makes the best of it for you, for your company, and for those around you. And then I'll leave you with final thoughts in terms of how we're helping our customers embrace this opportunity. So let's first start off with talking about what does the future of Edge actually hold. So I don't think for those of you who are watching this, it's any news that Edge is one of the biggest growth opportunity that is out there in the tech area. Even some of the things which have reached another level of hype right now, artificial intelligence, machine learning, a lot of that has to do with how Edge produces the data that these technologies take advantage of, and how Edge makes the results from AI and machine learning, as an example, available for people in these environments where they can make a difference. The market is growing at an exponential pace. There is a lot of interest in people who have been working on the traditional side of IT, looking at how OT can be made to work, the data center space, the cloud space. There's a lot of focus now on figuring out how to make all the things that we as technologists made work at in our data center environments, in our cloud environment. How do we make all of that work, all of that magic again appear at the edge? That's where the hype right now is, where that excitement is. There is a lot of data out there. I won't give you all of that. I'm sure that most of you are already aware. There is a sense that people like myself who've been in this area for a long time, that there is a transition that is happening in terms of what's going to happen at the edge in the next 3 to 4 years. We feel that a lot of the data that used to be generated and processed in the data center is now going to be processed and produced at the edge. That is a sea change from how things used to be done in the past. We believe that it's going to be anywhere from 60 to 70% of the data that is now going to shift to the edge. That's a big change for those people who are used to managing, running environments which are very focused on core data center paradigms, and now looking at how edge will play a role in that. One of the biggest changes that this will bring, what the future of edge will hold, is this convergence between IT and OT. For a long time, IT has played a very critical and very, very positive role in figuring out how we take advantage of technology to run businesses. The time is now time is coming where we are going to see the operation side of the house, the business side of the house, playing a bigger and more prominent role in figuring out how technology will play a role in achieving business outcomes for all the various companies that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. This is a big change. We believe that the right way to do this is through a collaboration, through IT and OT coming together and making things happen, as opposed to trying to do these in silos. So this is a quick view of the change that is upon us in terms of what the future will hold. There's going to be a shift in terms of where the data is produced and processed from core, from data center, from cloud environments into the edge. And then the second thing, which is more on the people and the process side, there is going to be a greater involvement from the operations, from the business side of the house, and this collaboration between IT and OT will become a key cornerstone for how things are going to be done in the days to come. Let's talk about the challenges now. I think some of this has to do with how the pendulum has swung from centralized to distributed to centralized again, and now we're going into an environment where a lot of the compute, the networking, is going to be a very decentralized, distributed environment. There are environments where a lot of data is being produced, which are distributed not just geographically, but also logically across a very large space. So that distributed environment is going to make it very, very challenging for folks to take the paradigms that they've been used to working in centralized environments and try to apply them to these distributed environments. The concept of being local, being autonomous, and being able to run things in a given location, independent of all the other locations around you. For example, for a retailer, for them to be able to run a store, even when it is disconnected from the rest of their 4,000 or 5,000 stores, that is very different from the way things have been done, where one data center, in a single data center, we assume that everything is connected, everything is available at any given time. So different paradigm, different way of doing things. The distributed environment brings its own challenges and also massive benefits when it comes to taking advantage of the diversity of the data and applications that can be put in these situations. The other thing that causes a lot of challenges for us, this varies from vertical to vertical in terms of where you're looking. But there are a lot of verticals that we see where edge is going to be key for future development. However, what we also notice is that there's a lot of legacy that these verticals have to deal with. Manufacturing is one example of these verticals, right? So there is transformation, literal transformation that we're starting to see on the factory floor in terms of taking all the hardware-centric environments that we have on the floor and converting them into software-defined models. However, this is not an easy transition. There's massive amounts of legacy equipment there, legacy processes there, ways of working that have to be dealt with. So that's going to be one of the biggest challenges. How do you take these brownfield environments and make something out of them which is exciting and which agrees with the future of edge? Second is obviously the rigidity that we are often faced with in these environments. The physical constraints in terms of the sizes, the amount of equipment that can be placed, the connectivity constraints that we have, the latency issues, a lot of the things that we often take for granted in our data center environments, those are not going to be available there. So that rigidity is going to be one other challenge that's going to be there. And of course, the effort. It is not, in many ways, right, the way we've been running our IT environments, they're tried and tested. We know exactly what to expect when we roll out a new program, roll out a new application. We kind of have a sense of what will work, what will not work. That's not always the case here at the edge. There are lots of challenges ranging from people process challenges to technology challenges that have to be tried, that have to be figured out. Only then can you expect some sort of a success. So lots of those issues are going to be there, which have to be addressed as we go into these environments. Finally, one of the things that I often tell people, right, and this is going to be one of my first tips that I'm going to share with you in a minute, that has to do with the IT and the OT divide that we often see in these verticals that are embracing edge at a phenomenal pace, right? Manufacturing, retail, oil and gas, utilities, you name it, right? All these verticals are going at a massive pace towards digitalization of their edge environments. So one of the things that I often see, right, is the divide between how OT thinks about the benefits that they're going to get from edge and how IT sees the benefits. One good example of this, right, on the slide you're seeing improve operational efficiency, right? This was one of the survey questions. If you'll notice that the IT folks, about a quarter of them thinks that yes, there will be some improvement in efficiency if you put edge computing on at the edge. However, almost half the people on the OT side believe that's the case. So there is this divide, right? And the reason most likely that the operational folks, the OT folks, think that is that they're very well aware of how things are done today in the environment and how big of a change technology can bring to that. So there is that slight divide or lack of congruence in terms of how people think. This starts translating into issues in terms of speed at which people want to move in the IT organization, the OT organization, as well as what their expectations are from the outcome. And that, if not handled properly, can lead to disillusionment. So let me now share with you, before I get into the tips, some of the key things, right, that are going to be different in the edge environments from the IT environments. A lot of the folks who we work with tend to come from the IT environments. They're either learning about these edge OT environments, or they're OT people, right, who are trying to embrace things from the IT realm. Challenges from a technology perspective are many. Latency, bandwidth, privacy, reliability, the local dependencies, all these things are very relevant. But what is key here is that all of these issues can be addressed if you're able to look at things from a holistic perspective. If you're just going in and looking at it from from a technology perspective, it is very likely that these problems will become bigger problems than they really are. But if you're looking at it holistically, bringing people along, changing processes to take into account the fact that there might be latency issues, there might be reliability issues, but those have to be factored in, you'll be a lot more successful. So now with that, let's jump right into the tips. So as I said, right, these tips and tricks are basically some of the lessons, some of the stories that I've been privileged and honored to be part of, but also things that I've learned from over the years. So my first tip for you, and this is probably the most important tip, so I've put it right up front for you to look at. While technology is important, focus on people and process is what will drive optimal results for you. So this is super important, right? You can have the best technology solution out there, but if you don't have people and processes lined up with it, it's not going to go anywhere. I'll give you an example, right? This is my first story I'm going to share with you today. So we had a customer of ours, and it was a retailer, and they would often come to us and tell us about this unexplained outage that they would often have in the middle of the day during the week. They could not figure out what it was. We were perplexed as well, and we thought, okay, there must be some strange issue with either the applications or maybe the server. There's something going on. Turns out, after some investigation, that what was actually going on was that the server on which the apps for that particular store location, the edge in this case, that server was sitting under the desk of someone, an employee in the store. During the day, as it got busy and more people started to come and talk to that employee, the noise from the fan of that server became an impediment for that person to talk to those customers. So what did he do? Well, he did the right thing. He turned the server off. And of course, that resulted in the outage. So the message, the key, the lesson to learn from here is, right, that the people who are in these environments taking advantage of all this technology that we're putting out there, they need to be fully aware of what it is that we are bringing to them, how they're going to use it, and understand the benefits of it. Otherwise, you'll keep having some variation of the scenario where the employee turned the power off. So that's my first tip. Let's go to the second tip. Product lifecycle expectations are different at the edge. Frankly, stakeholder expectations in general are different. The business looks at technology as an enabler. It does not look at it as the end goal. A lot of us who come from IT backgrounds, we have been used to these environments where the outcomes are assumed, and we focus on making sure that the feeds and speeds are there, the technology actually works, and all that good stuff. That's not the case in these business environments. Product life cycles are one manifestation of that. I'll share one more story with you. One of my early customers, we're talking 20 years back now, in the IoT space, that's one of the areas of edge. They were a utility, electric utility, and we were deploying these routers on pole tops for them. So they were very interested in a certain feature on the router which was not available at that time, but it was coming. It was going to be available in the next hardware release that was going to be announced very soon. So the normal way, our guys, right, our sales team went in and said, yeah, don't worry about it, Mr. Customer. We'll take care of this. It's coming in the next release. We'll give you a great discount. You can have this feature in the next release, and you'll be all good. The customer laughed at the sales guy and told him that that router that had been installed on the pole top, that was not coming down for 15 years, at least. So the challenge, right, in these environments, in these utility environments, and this particular utility was actually in a very challenging geographic area. Often for them to have people go on top of these poles and install these routers would cost thousands of dollars. In fact, for some of these locations, they had to do helicopters. And those helicopters, the total expense could be in tens of thousands of dollars. So for them, the life cycle that we were used to in a data center, that, hey, you've got one router here, take it out, put another one in, that life cycle was simply meaningless. For them, this device had to work for 15 years. In fact, I routinely deal with customers, right, who tell me that 30 years is a very fair expectation when it comes to life cycles for these products. So we have to think about that. And I think one of the good things that comes out of this is that if you start thinking about product life cycles in that way, it also starts changing your thinking in other areas. You start thinking like the customers who actually are going to use these products, and start putting yourselves in their shoes. That's a game changer. That's what makes Edge successful. Let me come to the third tip. This is the physical safety and regulatory compliance, which is often a lot more critical in these environments that we are typically used to in the IT space. So you have to factor time and technology in for these things. This does not mean that you forget about cybersecurity, but cybersecurity, right, the way we traditionally have thought about it in the CIA paradigm, right, confidentiality, integrity, availability, that often is flipped in these environments, in these edge environments. It's often about availability, then integrity, and then finally confidentiality. It has to do, things have to work. That's the availability part. Yes, integrity is important. You don't want bad commands to be going back and forth on a factory floor, in a factory floor environment, turning things on and off, which they should not be turning on and off. But confidentiality is the last thing that a lot of these people have in mind. Of course, this varies from vertical to vertical, environment to environment, but generally speaking, the way people think about security in these environments is different. And then physical security is a big concern. I can't tell you how many times we have been surprised in my 20 years about the rigor of the physical safety requirements that our customers have, and we've become the respect that we have learned to show them for how much they value the safety of their employees, of their end customers, and how they would want to make sure that the technology that we're deploying does not compromise that safety. So that's the kind of view, that's the kind of thinking that has to be there. I'll tell you that people in my organization have had helicopter rescue trainings, basically figuring out how on an oil rig They would get rescued by a helicopter. And what does that entail? And without that, our inability to go in and deploy any technology. And initially, we would be like, that's probably a little too much. But over time, we have learned through experiences that that actually is essential. Regulatory compliance is another area. I can't tell you how many projects have gotten delayed because somebody did not think of the regulatory compliance aspect that had to be addressed before the project could go live. That is critical. That is something that all of us have to think about in these environments. So that is my tip 3. Physical safety and regulatory compliance. Keep that in mind. Keep that front of your mind as you're working through the planning for these projects. All right, tip number 4. So physical space constraints and other physical limitations are an actual thing at the edge. Your architecture needs to consider these. So I have this picture that I often show some of my colleagues. It is a picture of, it's again, a retail location. And there are these servers that are installed in the store to run various applications that they have, including point of sale application, things like that. The interesting thing about these servers is that these servers are not mounted in a rack. They are not even sitting under somebody's desk, like the example that I shared with you earlier. These servers are actually mounted on a wall. Now, you might be thinking that's pretty clever, that's pretty advanced. They have figured a way to mount servers on. Well, yeah, but this wall is the wall of a restroom. So somebody figured out that the best place to put these servers was inside a restroom where they would be out of the way, nobody would see them, and they would be located somewhere that they could be accessed whenever needed. So these servers are actually sitting in a restroom, doing what they're supposed to do, but out of the way physically from all the other things that are going on in the store. So physical space constraints, that's an extreme example, but the physical space constraints are a reality. You cannot assume that the physical space would be there. There are other physical limitations too. I've had situations where we've had dust getting into boxes. I had situations where we have had to put heaters, electric heaters, into our boxes to keep them warm because the temperatures would drop dramatically during winter. So there are things like that, right, that you have to keep in mind. These are often things that we don't think about when we're thinking about data centers, but these are key aspects that have to be kept in mind. So that's my tip number 4 for you. All right, coming to tip number 5. This has to do with my background. I spent many years at Cisco. That was my first company. I built out Cisco's IoT services organization, had a lot of fun doing that. So my tip number 5 comes from there. So over time, we have all become very used to essentially unlimited connectivity in our environments, right? So you go in, you don't have to worry about bandwidth. Just like cloud computing has basically gotten rid of the concept that there is limitations on compute, connectivity has always been something that we are now able to start taking for granted. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case for us at the edge. Connectivity is often constrained. I'll give you an example of another customer of ours. They have 5,000 locations in US. And the challenge with these locations is that quite a few of them are in remote areas, in rural areas. And what happens is that these locations are often disconnected. So they tell me that at any given time, 20 to 30% of these warehouses that they have are actually disconnected. So they have to factor that in, not only from making sure that these warehouses stay operational, so they're not dependent upon some central location, but also the fact that if they're from a central location and trying to view what's going on, they will not have that visibility. So those types of things have to be kept in mind. Connectivity cannot be assumed, but here is the key. It's not just about connectivity. It's also about storage. You cannot assume storage in these environments. Manageability. You cannot assume that everything will be visible. That is the story that you have to live with at the edge. All right, let me come to my next tip. And this is a tip that has to do with the biggest hype that we have out there right now, AI and machine learning. This is going to change our lives for good. Something that needs to be kept in mind is that edge, where most of the data is being generated, where most of the data likely is going to be processed, that's where the AI machine learning models have to work. However, I think most of you have a sense by now from what I've been saying, there are going to be constraints at the edge. Amount of compute that you will have available, the ability to run machine learning models is going to be fairly challenged in these environments. So two things, right, that in this tip I want to share with you, right, that's something that we are doing and something that you should consider too. First is to look at machine learning models, like quantized models, pruned models, where you don't have to have a massive amount of compute to do the machine learning. So first thing is look at machine learning AI models which can work in the constraints of the edge. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, right, think about how the edge can be constructed, keeping in mind the needs of generative AI and other types of AI machine learning models. You cannot build edge environments ignoring these transformational technologies that are upon us. You have to keep those in mind. Once you keep those in mind and architect with the right amount of compute, the right amount of connectivity, right amount of storage, your chances of your success are going to be greatly increased. But again, you will not have a free hand in many cases. So what will be critical is keeping in mind models, machine learning models that are available out there, which take less compute, less storage to do the same level of precision, almost the same level of precision that you would get with massive machine learning models. So that, for you, is my tip number 6. Let's go to my next tip. Tip number 7. So one of the things that I often hear from my customers as I'm talking to them and they're thinking about what they're going to do at the edge, what applications they're going to run, often I hear this paradigm, right, where they're still thinking about cloud native apps. They're thinking about how applications used to run in the data centers. That has to stop. Because if you are thinking about applications which essentially assume unlimited compute, which assume that there will be storage, there'll be connectivity which will be limitless, available all the time, you're going to have issues when they constrain environments you're going to run into. But that's not it. That's the negative side of it. On the positive side, these applications are going to miss out on all the benefits that the edge provides. The ability, the fact that these edge environments are super close to where the data is being produced, right? The proximity to the actual production of the data, these applications are not going to take advantage of that. The small latency that will be available to these apps from the place where the data is actually being generated. They're not going to be able to take advantage of the distributed nature of these edge environments. These edge environments can connect and play with each other and take advantage of each other. Another thing that these apps are going to miss out on is the fact that these environments are often constructed in a way that takes advantage of the business outcomes that are being sought in these locations. For example, on a factory floor, if we are trying to improve the safety of the employees, the applications are often going to be built to address that in that local environment. So a lot of the things that the benefits that edge brings, they're going to be lost if these apps are written and built the same way they've been built for many, many years. So critical, number one, make sure that these apps are being written, keeping in view the constraints, the specific constraints that you will run into in that environment. And number two, make sure, right, that they're taking advantage of all the benefits that an edge environment brings. So that, for you, is tip number 7. Tip number 8, I've got 2 more to go after this. Don't apply data center principles to the edge. I think that's probably obvious to folks who've been listening to me so far. The centralized data management, the way that we look at a central location where all the decisions are made, the ability to see everything in one location, the massive amount of verticalized resources available, a lot of that is not going to be available in these edge environments. So that's something that has to be kept in mind. If you try to apply the data center principles to the edge, probably going to run into issues. Tip number 9. So I think this is the one question I get asked by my customers the most. And that question is this: what should I do first? Should I first figure out what use cases I want to implement? Or should I first build the infrastructure and then worry about the use cases later? Well, the logical answer to this, right, likely is, right, that you should first figure out what use cases you want to run. If it's a retail environment, what type of things that you want to do? Do you want to do theft reduction? Do you want to do inventory management? What are the things that you want to do? And then based on the needs of those applications, figure out what your infrastructure would look like. However, in a real world environment, that's often not how things work. Our customers often do not have a full view of what the use cases are that they're going to implement today, tomorrow, and how these use cases, even if they knew what they are, how they're going to evolve. And there's often pressure to get something in place which will allow them the flexibility to play around and see what will work or not. So the way that I often advise customers is to take a middle route, right? Don't go to the extremes of first spending years figuring out what the use cases are going to be, only to find out that those use cases are now outdated, or the other way where you build an infrastructure with massive amounts of resources and things that you feel were needed and not have the use cases that would take advantage of them. Go the middle route, start with some use cases, do POCs, figure out what the right exit criteria for these POCs is. One of the challenges that I often see at the edge is death by POC. Right? So don't get stuck in POCs without a clearly defined exit criteria. All the stakeholders must agree on these exit criteria, and then build a platform. Right? That is the key thing. If, as a business, you can build a platform, taking advantage of products and solutions from various vendors, which allows you to run the right applications in that environment, that is going to help you be successful once more applications come and once the infrastructure needs to be expanded. Having that is going to let you achieve business outcomes in a way that going one way or the other will not. So that is my tip number 9. And now coming to my last tip number 10. I think this will summarize for you the whole story that I've shared with you so far, right? The war stories I've shared, some of the lessons I've shared with you. The key here is, folks, having a well thought out edge strategy trumps everything, right? So what will often happen in these environments, in these businesses who start realizing that intelligence at the edge is crucial for them to achieve business outcomes, stay competitive, because all their competitors are now starting to use intelligence at the edge. If it's a trucking company, their competitors are using software to figure out where the trucks are, how to best optimize the routes, optimize the drivers, all that kind of stuff, right? So they know that to stay competitive, they have to do this. The problem is that within these businesses, multiple departments are going to start trying to figure out things on their own. The urgency is there, the push is there, the desire is there. So to make that happen, right, everybody's going to go for it. That is a recipe for chaos. That's a recipe for disaster. So my advice, my tip number 10 here is very important for our customers, very important for those of us who are advising these customers to ensure that we are stepping back and thinking about what a holistic strategy for achieving the goals that we have is going to be. Once we have that strategy figured out, how we're going to transform ourselves, how we're going to transform our customers, then building the culture and ensuring that we're executing effectively will achieve the results that you want. Without that, it is often going to be a pipe dream. So folks, those were my 10 tips for you. Let me share some final thoughts in terms of how we are helping our customers take advantage of some of these ideas that are presented to you in achieving their outcomes at the edge. The way VMware, right, the edge compute business that I'm responsible for, the way that VMware is helping our customers achieve their goals at the edge is building that platform that I just shared with you, right? That platform essentially becomes that central focus point where all the strategy decisions, all the things in terms of actually deploying applications, getting what you want from those applications happens. We believe that there's a software-defined edge that is coming. We believe that there's going to be disaggregation between hardware and software at the edge, whether it's in manufacturing, retail, oil and gas. There's going to be a lot more focus on being able to put software in these environments where you can orchestrate without actually touching it because of the lack of scales often that you have in these environments, with the right amount of infrastructure, of course, underneath it. But most importantly, being able to program this in a way which allows these constrained, diverse, often different from each other edge environments to function properly. We are building a platform that will essentially take the friction out of deploying outcomes at the edge. So if you're running a retail environment, you're running a factory environment today, if somebody comes to you and say, hey, we would like to deploy a set of applications to improve our business, it's not going to be easy. There's a lot of challenges with that. You have to think about what hardware you're going to use, what software you're going to use, how is all that going to translate to business outcomes. What we are doing as a company, as an organization, is we are working on removing that friction. We are producing that platform that will help you deploy these applications in a friction-free way, allowing you to focus on the outcomes while we take care of ensuring that all the things that need to happen in terms of orchestration, end-to-end security, managing the runtimes are there for you. And one of the biggest things that we are bringing with this edge compute stack, which is the name of our platform, to our customers, is that it will also help you do artificial intelligence applications. So the orchestration of artificial intelligence, I mentioned to you in one of my tips that running the right machine learning model in the right environment at the edge is going to be critical to our success. Orchestrating that artificial intelligence at the edge is what this platform is going to help do. So that's what we're bringing to you, and I hope that those of you who are going to be joining us in Barcelona in a couple of weeks' time, they will see some of these things in action there. And but if you're not there, I hope that the tips that I've shared with you today, those are going to be beneficial and would help you achieve the outcomes that you're looking for yourself, for your customers, as well as those people who are seeking advice from you. Thank you very much, and have a great day. We're going to see if there are any questions and answer those questions.